Welcome to Bankole's Nation. I'm your host, Bankole Thompson, and welcome to the inaugural edition of Bankole's Nation Extra, where every week we set the tone for you for the rest of the week. Bankole's Nation Extra will come to you on Mondays, and of course, we'll pick it up back on Thursdays with our weekly explosive episodes. Stay with us right after this break. Welcome to Bankole's Nation. I'm your host, Bankole Thompson, and thank you so much for joining us. Because of an increase in demand in terms of viewership and request for this weekly podcast, we're launching what I call Bankole's Nation Extra. It will come out on Mondays to set this pace and the stage for you for the rest of the week. And of course, we'll pick it back on Thursday with our explosive weekly episodes. And of course, that includes interviews and commentary analysis from me regarding issues. Of course, we also bring in some very interesting folk to share their perspective around issues and special interviews and you name it. But Bankole's Nation Extra will come out every Monday to basically set the stage and get you going for the rest of the week. And so this is the inaugural edition of Bankole's Nation Extra as part of our podcast. And I want to thank you all for joining us. And before we get into the subject, I want to talk about just quickly, though, I need you all to subscribe to this podcast. It's very important that you subscribe. It's very important that you share with your family members, share with your friends, share with your network. You can listen to this podcast while you're driving. You can listen to it on the job. If you're on a break, you can listen to it on your phone. You can listen to it while you're doing an exercise. You can listen to it while you're jogging early in the morning. And that's the beauty of this space, of the podcast world itself, because you get access to this information that we're providing you on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, if you will. And the perspective that we share here is very rare. It is not contrived perspective. It's independent. It is not controlled analysis. It doesn't submit to the racial caste system. We tell it like it is here. And of course, this podcast, I know, has rattled some folk, or they hate it. They don't want no part of this because we're giving you the unvarnished perspective. And we're not looking behind to see who's watching before we say anything. And they don't want that kind of perspective. They don't want that kind of viewpoint. And we're sharing this because we have a commitment to not only public service journalism, but a commitment to empower people and give them empowering information. And some of you have reached out to me and said you're very excited and you're glad to see that I'm back in this space of not only using the pen, but of course using my voice to lay claim to the issues of legitimate discontent. And that's because very few people in the media echo chamber speak like I do. Very few people in the media echo chamber are willing to push the envelope the way I do. Very few people in the media echo chamber are willing to raise the Socratic questions that I raise in this podcast. And that's why we're unique, we're different. And that's why you trust us with information, because we're not playing games with people's lives. We're playing games with the issues. We're committed to this. And it's very important that platforms like this exist to empower you. And you can listen to it and don't have to look behind you to see who's watching you listening to this. And so I want you, we need you to subscribe to this podcast. We need you to send it to your friends, even those who are out of state, all across the nation. The other day, somebody reached out to me, a brother reached out to me from the United Kingdom and said, I just subscribed to your podcast on Spotify. I'll be listening to it from now on. So we even got subscribers in the UK. We want you to send this podcast to people all over the country, from Mississippi to New Orleans to Atlanta, Washington, D.C., Texas. I mean, all over around the world. Share it with your friends. If they want to keep abreast of issues that are important in their lives, this is one of the platforms where we bring those issues alive. And it's just important. So I want to begin with the Bankole Nations Extra by asking you to do that. Don't just come on our YouTube page. Don't just go on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple and listen to it, but share it with your network. Share it with your coworkers. Say, hey, you may not agree with this, but he's saying something interesting. Share it with your family members. Over the dinner table, talk about it. And people have reached out to me in the past where they basically have told me that, listen, we discuss what you talk about at the dinner table. I had a while back, I remember somebody approached me and said, when we get home in the evening, we always talk about what Bankole is saying. So we want you to subscribe to this podcast and share it with your network, your friends, your family members, co-workers, colleagues, and you name it. Also, we're going into the week. This is the 2nd year anniversary of the book, Fiery Conscience. This is my 5th book. This book came out in 2023, and it basically documents some of my important work in terms of me having a front row seat, but also me participating in some of the economic and racial justice battles of the last 2 decades or so. And the book contains a lot, and this is the 2nd year anniversary since it came out in August of 2023. You may want to read the review by Forbes magazine. Did an excellent review of this book. Just Google Fiery Conscience and Forbes, and you'll see it'll come up. You can read the entire review that Forbes did of the book itself. But this is the 2nd year anniversary of my book, Fiery Conscience. This is my 5th book. So I've written 5 books in 2 decades, 5th book itself. My first book came out in 2006. Remember, I discussed that on this platform. It was titled Ignoring the Underprivileged, and it was used at Eastern Michigan University, 2006, 19 years ago, for required reading by then a legendary journalist, community activist, Professor Charles Simmons. So try to pick a copy of this book, Fiery Conscience. Clearly, everything that I say and do is fiery conscience. I think you all know that. And there's a lot here in this book. The foreword was written by Lena Nichols, who was a former sharecropper from Arkansas, wrote the foreword to this book. And of course, the epilogue is written by Janice Carney, who was a former White House presidential diarist, the first Black woman to serve as a presidential diarist in the White House. And there's, of course, a lot more to the book itself. But Google it. You can find it on the website of the Pulse Institute, thepulseinstitute.org. You can buy a copy of Fiery Conscience. And of course, if you buy a copy, I'll be more than happy to autograph a copy for you. Again, Fiery Conscience, a treatise on 2 decades of the impactful journalism of Bankole Thompson. 2-year anniversary. August 2023. I've been in many lecture halls. I've been on many college campuses. I've addressed many banquets relating to this book. Even participated at a conference at the World Bank. And of course, people always find it fascinating, but get a copy of the book. So we're going to go into Bankole's Nation Extra. As I've been telling you, it was only 2 weeks ago that on this platform, I talked about Mary Sheffield. The 2025 Detroit mayor's race. I made it clear from day one and did an analysis commentary on this platform about how Mary Sheffield is the establishment candidate. That the establishment wants Mary Sheffield. They don't want Reverend Solomon Kinloch, her challenger. We've gone through the primary. Now we have 2 candidates running in the general election, Mary Sheffield, the president of the Detroit City Council, and Reverend Solomon Kinloch, the senior pastor of Triumph Church. And when I indicated that Solomon Kinloch is the anti-establishment candidate and Mary Sheffield is the establishment candidate, some folks were wondering, what does that mean? It simply means that the powers that be prefer Mary Sheffield over Reverend Solomon Kinloch. And the campaign finance reports are in. And I was looking at some of them before I came on. And campaign finance reports bore witness or affirms the fact that Mary Sheffield is the establishment candidate, something I said 2 weeks ago on this platform when I criticized the media. After they went after Solomon Kinloch, they really never went after Mary Sheffield. They're yet to go after Mary Sheffield. So we've not seen any kind of media scrutiny of Mary Sheffield out there, but we've seen enough media scrutiny of the Reverend Solomon Kinloch. So clearly, Mary Sheffield is the establishment candidate. And the campaign finance reports came in very interesting. I was looking at some of them. Mary Sheffield, of course, is being supported by RAC Holdings, which is the Political Action Committee connected to Dan Gilbert, Detroit's largest billionaire investor. So Dan Gilbert is putting his horse behind Mary Sheffield's campaign, right? And this is politics. This is how it's done, right? Folks write checks to people that they believe would secure their interests, or people that they trust, or people that they think are going to do what they want, or people that they believe are going to, in their own view, help the city in the way that they want to see the city helped, right? So endorsements and writing a check to a campaign is an extension of your value and what you believe. So Dan Gilbert, Detroit's billionaire investor, is putting his money behind Mary Sheffield. And of course, Mary Sheffield also got a lot of support from other business leaders. And I was looking at some of the reports as well. Mary Sheffield got a lot of contributions from people in Bloomfield Hills, all the way in Grand Rapids, and I think one person in Grosse Pointe, but I saw a lot of Bloomfield Hills, and of course, Bloomfield Hills addresses in the thousands of dollars. She also got a lot of support from Arab American business folk in Dearborn. She's also getting a lot of checks, her campaign from Dearborn. And compared to Reverend Solomon Kinloch, he's getting small donations. That's basically what he's getting. Reverend Kinloch has about 400,000. Mary Sheffield raised about over $1 million, right? And the contributions tell you who the establishment candidate is. And clearly Mary Sheffield is the establishment candidate. And this is a designation that she cannot run away from. It is what it is, right? And of course, we know, Mary Sheffield has, likes to portray herself as a die-hard progressive. She likes to stand next to Rashida Tlaib at press conferences, and so forth, raise holy hell, which is all fine and good, right? I mean, I think we see that from politicians all the time, raising hell and doing press conference and so forth. But the folk with deep pockets in and around Detroit, outside of Detroit, are lining up behind Mary Sheffield. And that's a fact. That's not a fiction. That's not made up. Anybody can go look at the campaign finance report, go on the Wayne County Clerk's website and so forth. It will lead you to the campaign finance report and look it up for yourself. Look it up for yourself. And that's where we are. And it's important for you to know that, because once the both campaigns get into the full swing of throwing dirts at each other and so forth, there'll be accusations of, that's the voice of the business community, or this candidate is going to be a tool of the business community and so forth. It's important for you to know who is who and who is standing where, And now let me tell you this: there's nothing wrong in Gilbert writing a check to Mary Sheffield. Gilbert's PAC, the RAC Holdings, writing a check to Mary Sheffield. There's nothing wrong in Arab American business leaders writing a check to Mary Sheffield. They believe that Mary Sheffield will secure their interests, whatever business deals they have in the city. They go with who they believe will, that's how this political game works. Compared to Reverend Kinloch, who has small donations and been supported by the UAW. So all the big money is going to Mary Sheffield. What I also found very interesting is that a couple of ministers who are supporting Mary Sheffield. Bishop Charles Ellis, Greater Grace Temple, supporting Mary Sheffield. Reverend Marvin Winans, who had a big blowout with Mayor Mike Duggan over his church on Woodward, which, there was a big issue with it. Remember when the City of Detroit's Corporation Counsel, Conrad Marlett, came out and really trying to put the screws on Reverend Marvin Winans. Marvin Winans was pissed about that, and because they were trying to get him to wrap up or do whatever with his church that was on Woodward that was not completed. But somehow, I don't know, maybe a deal was made, and so we didn't see that fight anymore. But Marvin Winans is supporting Mary Sheffield, and Reverend Wendell Anthony is supporting Mary Sheffield. And I want to talk about that for a minute, because I think that would not surprise anybody, right? Wendell Anthony is supporting Mary Sheffield. And you got to see this way, Marvin Beatty, and I know Marvin Beatty very well. We know each other. He's also supporting. Mary Sheffield, right? They've written checks to Mary Sheffield's campaign. But Wendell Anthony it stands out. He's the president of the Detroit NAACP. Wendell Anthony has always been a big supporter of Mike Duggan. Has always. He's one minister and the head of the NAACP who, when Mike Duggan says jump, he says, how high do you want me to jump? This is my opinion, and this is my commentary. And I can tell you, and I know these folks very well. I know Wendell very, very well. We know each other very, very well, and he knows that. He'll tell you that we know each other very, very well. We may not see eye to eye today, but we know each other very, very well. It was Wendell Anthony who said to me, I remember at the NAACP Freedom Fund dinner president's reception at Motor City Hotel Casino, Reverend Anthony said to me, "Don't Mike Duggan know you ain't scared?" Said that because I'm always critical of Mayor Mike Duggan. But Wendell and I know each other. In 2012, when he reached out to me to give me an NAACP award at the dinner, my question to him was, what do I owe this award? Because I know I'm not your guy. I'm not your boy. And he laughed. He said, well, you're doing some out here. You're doing some out here. But my point here is that I know these guys very well. I can write a biography. I can write a book on each of them with my eyes closed. That's how much I know them. And they know I know them. So Wendell Anthony is supporting is supporting Mary Sheffield for mayor. And you have to see it this way, right? Wendell Anthony is part of the establishment. Yes, he is I call him the unofficial minister of the Democratic Party, of the Michigan Democratic Party. Well, of late, he's supporting Mayor Duggan for governor, of course, and Mayor Duggan mounting his independent race for governor. We're going to get to that later on down the line. We get enough time for that. But Wendell Anthony is the unofficial pastor of the Michigan Democratic Party for a long time. He's the one that is called upon to give the invocation at the end of the state party convention and so forth. Him supporting Mary Sheffield over Reverend Kinloch. I want you to pay close attention to this analysis and commentary here. Reverend Kinloch, Solomon Kinloch is a pastor. And in a very long time in recent Detroit history, he's the only minister that has come close in this mayor's race. No other minister has come close like he'd come close. Others have ran for mayor, but they never came up second. They were behind. Others ran for city council and successfully got on the city council. So Solomon Kinloch is the first pastor in Detroit in a long time who has come close to the mayorship by finishing number 2 in the race for mayor of Detroit. And now he's in the running with Mary Sheffield. They're the 2 candidates headed into the general election. So for Wendell Anthony, the senior pastor of Fellowship Chapel and the president of the Detroit NAACP, to say, I'm supporting Mary Sheffield over Pastor Solomon Kinloch. And I'll tell you my thinking here, because you got to understand these people to be able to analyze them. I know these guys very well, and they know I know. They know I know them. I know these guys very, very well. Like I said, I can write a book on a Wendell Anthony with my eyes closed. I can, because I've been at the table with them, right? I've been in the room with them, in the highest rooms with them. They know that, I talk to the powers that be that they talk to. They know that. And nothing new here. So for Wendell Anthony to decide to support Mary Sheffield over Pastor Solomon Kinloch, to me, this is the thinking, right? So if Pastor Kinloch were to become the mayor of the city of Detroit, there'll be no need for Wendell Anthony. No business leader or CEO will go to Wendell Anthony and try to kiss his ring. Because you know why? We got a pastor as mayor. It's that simple. This is not rocket science, y'all. This is not a federal case, y'all. This is not a PhD thesis. If Pastor Solomon Kinloch were to become the mayor of Detroit, there would be no need for a Wendell Anthony. Because why would any CEO talk to Wendell Anthony when a pastor is the mayor of the city? So Wendell Anthony would not be able to leverage whatever he leverages, whether it's the NAACP, whatever it is, for people to come and kiss his ring, as they say. And of course, Pastor Kinloch would not kiss Wendell Anthony's ring. He knows that. So, and I'm using Wendell Anthony as an example because he is the premier minister among the group that are supporting Mary Sheffield, because he's a president of the NAACP, right? He puts together the largest sit-down dinner, right? And when you talk to some of these business leaders, white CEOs, and so forth, they talk to Wendell Anthony. He's the head Negro in charge, the HNIC, right? So he's part of the establishment. So supporting Mary Sheffield works for Wendell Anthony. It makes sense for him. It makes sense for him. So you may ask yourself the question, well, is Wendell Anthony supporting Mary Sheffield instead of Pastor Solomon Kinloch, a man of the cloth, just like Wendell Anthony? Is he supporting Mary Sheffield over a fellow minister, Solomon Kinloch, out of his own survival instincts? Think about it. Is that why Wendell Anthony has decided, I'm going to go with Sheffield? Because maybe that's a survival instinct. Maybe my bread might be buttered that way. I'm just saying. Is Wendell Anthony deciding that he supports Sheffield because it will continue to butter his bread with a question mark? Right? Because if Pastor Kinloch ends up becoming the mayor, there'll be no need for any high-powered minister in this town to say, I'm Bishop so-and-so, I'm Reverend Dr. so-and-so. Y'all got to come talk to me. Business leaders got to come talk to me. Y'all got to come kiss my ring. Y'all got to do this. There'll be no need for that because we got a minister as mayor. Why do we need to talk to you? I'm trying to apply logic to this analysis. Logic and commentary, intelligent commentary to this analysis. See, this is what you will not see anywhere else. In the media echo chamber in Detroit, you would not get this level of analysis anywhere else because nobody is willing to speak the way we do because some folks are too compromised to speak, too compromised with a capital C. Some folks have been at the table taking too many pork chops that their hands are tied behind their back. They can't speak. They can't do the way we do. Some folks are not that independent as we are to speak truth to power and to lay claims to the voices of legitimate discontent. So when you look at the mayor's race, Mary Sheffield, the establishment candidate, something we said 2 weeks ago on this platform, and Reverend Solomon Kinloch, the anti-establishment candidate. So you have the establishment candidate and the anti-establishment candidate, and both of them are Black. Think about that. Now you ask yourself, why do some powerful white business folk want to give more money to Mary Sheffield, a Black candidate, over Solomon Kinloch, another Black candidate? Why? I'll let you reason on that. Let that be an assignment. You reason on it. Talk about it over the dinner table. Talk about it. Talk about it on the job, when you're on break with your colleagues. Talk about it. Think about it when you're exercising in the morning, going on a walk. Listen to the podcast and ask yourself, we have two Black candidates. We have two Black candidates, and they can't out-Black each other now. Remember that. Two Black candidates, right? Mary Sheffield, the campaign talks about her grandfather, who was a pioneer in the UAW, right? Horace Sheffield Sr., right? Pastor Solomon Kinloch's mother was born in Dillon County, South Carolina, the home of Confederacy. She was born picking cotton. Pastor Solomon Kinloch went to the Baptist Theological Seminary in Nashville, where my good friend and mentor, Reverend Dr. Bernard Lafayette Jr. went to the American Baptist Theological Seminary, which is where Pastor Kinloch attended theology school, right? He didn't complete, but he went to the American Baptist Theological Seminary, right? My good friend and mentor, Reverend Dr. Bernard Lafayette, one of Dr. King's main lieutenants who was in Dr. King's inner circle. Bernard Lafayette and John Lewis, the late civil rights hero, Congressman John Lewis, together attended the American Baptist Theological Seminary in Nashville. They were roommates. Lafayette and Lewis, Bernard Lafayette and John Lewis were roommates at the American Baptist Theological Seminary where Reverend Kinloch attended, right? So we can say, Mary Sheffield can lay legitimate claims to Black negritude. And so can Solomon Kinloch lay legitimate claims to Black negritude. But why You have to ask yourself the question. It's a Socratic question. Why would powerful white business folk decide we want to give more money, we want to give more moolah to Mary Sheffield, and not, we want to give moolah to Mary Sheffield and not to Pastor Solomon Kinloch? Why? And why did Wendell Anthony, who is a minister, decide I'm not going to support a fellow minister and pastor who pastors the largest Black church in Michigan, one of the largest in the nation? I'm not going to support this fellow pastor. I'm going to support Mary Sheffield. Why did Wendell Anthony decide that? Think about that. So it's clear to us that you have the establishment candidate and you have the anti-establishment candidate. The establishment candidate is Mary Sheffield, and the anti-establishment candidate is Solomon Kinloch. I've talked about the fact that what you're seeing is that Pastor Kinloch is not the favorite for many people who are among the Black elites in this town. They were no part of him. He's not the favorite, because, these folk believe that they have to be the only ones in the room. I want the CEOs to call me and talk to me. Don't talk to nobody else. Talk to me. I'm Reverend Dr. So-and-so. I'm Bishop so-and-so. I'm the one who met God. I'm the one having dinner with God tonight. You know how it is. Don't act like you don't know what I'm talking about. We got some big egos in this town in Detroit. Some big egos in this town in Detroit. But all for the benefit of what? Because when we look at the issues that we're dealing with, when I went to the funeral of those two kids, the Corey kids who died in the parking lot in their mother's vehicle, I went to their funeral. To pay my respect. I don't know that family, but I went there to pay my respect. I stayed for the entire funeral. Wendell Anthony was not at that funeral. Let me correct it. Reverend Wendell Anthony was not at that funeral, and he's the president of the Detroit NAACP. He was not at that funeral. Somebody probably saying, Lord have mercy. Reverend Wendell Anthony was not at that funeral, and he's the president of the Detroit NAACP. He was not at that funeral. So despite all the huff and puff that we have in this town, and folk talking about big titles here, who's more connected than who wants to stay in the room and don't allow other folk to come in the room. Black folks are out here catching hell. Babies are getting shot every other day. Yes, senior citizens are getting shot. Councilwoman Mary Waters, Councilwoman at large, Mary Waters, the highest vote getter, just last week dominated the media coverage in terms of, conflict resolution, what we need to do to address this problem with seniors. Seniors now getting shot, right? All these issues. Have you seen Wendell Anthony out here? No, you've not. He got his cell phone. Told somebody a long time ago he doesn't march anymore. He just gets his cell phone and he knows who to reach. He may even be able to reach God on his cell phone. He may even be able to reach Pope Leo on his cell phone. My point here, and I'm using him as an example because he's the head Negro in charge, and he knows that too. So I know these folks, man. Listen, I can write a book about each of them with my eyes closed. That's how much and they know we know each other. I know that we know each other very well. But with all the huff and puff about, who has this, who wants the biggest title, who wants this opportunity, all this stuff out here. Folks are out here suffering and tired. $600 million overtaxation of Detroit homeowners. That should be front and center of the campaign. What's Mary Sheffield going to do about that? I know she huffs and puffs all the time. She'll do her press conference here and there. The progressive candidate getting support from Dan Gilbert, Rock Holdens. In English literature, we call it a paradox, an oxymoron, right? But my point here is that people are out here suffering and they need help. So as you go into the week, this week, beginning Monday, think about these issues. Whether you support Mary Sheffield or Solomon Kinloch, I appreciate you listening to this podcast. I appreciate you coming on this podcast because we raise Socratic questions. We raise issues that are at the core of the survival question. We raise issues that no one else will dare touch. And so you can count on us as we, march into the general election for straight, independent, no BS, cut to the chase, analysis and commentary that doesn't submit itself to the racial caste system that's in the media. You know what I'm talking about. Yes. I've written 5 books. In each of them, I talk about the role of the media. I am a preeminent authority on that, and one of the few in this town left who can speak to those issues. So I appreciate you coming by for the inaugural edition of Bankole's Nation Extra. Come to you on Mondays to set you up for the rest of the week, and then Thursday we'll be back with our explosive weekly analysis and, of course, special interviews with special guests and so forth. So thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to subscribe, share this podcast with your family members, your colleagues on the job, friends, your network, old friends, all college roommates, whatever, wherever they are, share this podcast with them. Because remember, this perspective is rare. And they would rather not have this perspective. They'd rather have you drinking Kool-Aid. In the words of Spike Lee, they'll rather have you bamboozled. And we don't want you bamboozled. That's why we come to you through this podcast, Bankole's Nation. Thank you so much.